morning. But just to give you a little bit of background about each of the groups and to let you know that there are sign-in sheets in the back if you're interested in participating. The first work group that we felt was very important was the user groups work group. This will help us define the different types of users. I know we have some bicycle enthusiasts in the room today, and the different birders that we might have, hiking groups, equestrian groups, and to learn about their needs and their interests with regard to the overarching Rio Grande Trail concept. The second work group is the resource work group. That is really important in terms of ensuring that the natural and cultural resources along the trail are protected once we start establishing these trail segments, and actually even heightening some of these resources and providing education and outreach with regard to how important they are to our history and teaching folks about these resources. The third work group, which we will be hearing more about today, is actually the actual alignment work group. We're set up very well here in the southern part of the state because back in 2004, 2008, we did quite a bit of work on this part of the Rio Grande Trail. And we worked to create a pretty big plan and started reaching out to communities and starting to establish some of where we think these alignments could go. That work was kept in place and kind of held until now. And so I think we're actually in a very good place with regard to the southern Rio Grande. However, we want to make sure that we have this alignment work group that takes a look at this plan because it's old, and to make sure that it's meeting the needs that you folks have. And then also taking a look at the northern Rio Grande because not much planning has been done along the northern Rio Grande. So this alignment work group is going to be taking a look at actually where is the trail going to go, who would it interface with, which property owners would we have. So that's a work group that's actually been undertaking some pretty important tasks, and we'll be hearing a little bit more about that. The fourth work group is with regard to actual design and management and dealing with how are we actually going to build these trails. What will it take to put them in place? What are the safety issues? What are the liability issues? Very important questions that we have, and I know a lot of questions that have come up with regard to different agencies and property owners. The fifth work group is the communications work group. Secretary Latham from Department of Tourism, luckily we have her on the phone today. Communication is going to be very important, not only in between these different work groups, but also in presenting information to the public about what is the Rio Grande Trail, how are we going to brand it, how are we going to market it, how are we going to get people out there and enjoying the trail. So that's going to be very important, our mouthpiece, so to speak, for the Rio Grande Trail. And finally, we have the interagency work group. Representative Steinborn and Commissioner Zuni are going to be working quite a bit on that in terms of making sure that we have a lot of discussion that's happening between the different agencies, that we have tribal consultation that's happening in an appropriate way, and kind of bringing all of these together. So that's in a nutshell, those are the different work groups. If there are any of those work groups that you're interested in volunteering on, I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up. We do have leaders for each of the work groups, and they will be reaching out to you in terms of discussion and in different work group meetings.
Not sure any actions needed on this.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Tafoya. We are fortunate this morning to have a presentation. I think everything's set up. It'll be by Ms. Ellen Esposito, who's board chair, or board president of Insights El Paso Science Center, and Mr. Phil Goodell. So go ahead with your presentation, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to the Rio Grande Trail Commission for inviting us to come in and talk to you a little bit. I would like to welcome you to the Metroplex of Las Cruces, El Paso, Juarez. We are such a
a small community here. I know those of you from this area know that, and our economies depend on each other, our cultures depend on each other. And while we drove up from El Paso through the fog today, we definitely are very closely connected to Las Cruces and New Mexico. Personally, I'm an avid hiker and camper in New Mexico. I spend a lot of time over here exploring. I have some land up in Chama area, so I'm so excited about the idea of a trail from Texas to Colorado that hope to be able to hike that trail in my lifetime here. Not that we're postponing things, but just that as I get older, I find it's a little harder to do these things. I would like to introduce my compadres here. This is Dr. Mandy Kirch-Gessner. I invited her to join us today. She is the Executive Director of Insights El Paso Science Center. And Dr. Phil Goodell, as he introduced himself, is a board member of Insights, but he's also a geologist at the University of Texas at El Paso.
I'm going to steal that from you while you log in very shortly. Thank you for having us here today. And I applaud all of you for your efforts to do this. I just finished reading a ton of research about nature and nature experiences and what it does for our health, our mental well-being. And you couldn't have picked a better initiative to launch and follow through on. So this is just really timely personally for me, but also just love the fact that what you're doing and how this collaboration is unfolding. So thank you for having us here today, and kudos. So. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was born and raised in El Paso, and I've lived there all my life except to go to the East Coast to get educated. And I do believe there's kind of a great deal of potential communication and collaboration between El Paso and this part of New Mexico. Having been born and raised there, I actually think El Paso is part of New Mexico, and that's really where my sentiments come from.
Yeah. So we came to talk to you today about some property that Insights owns, which could potentially be a great trailhead for the Rio Grande Trail. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So Insights El Paso Science Center was actually founded in 1980. None of us were involved at that time with the museum. It's a private, not-for-profit organization, and we have a mission, which is to promote science education through exploratory, interactive learning experience for people of all ages. We have a STEM center, which we use to encourage exploration and interactive learning experiences. Right now, we are located in the Segundo Barrio of El Paso. That means that we are about 3 blocks from the Juarez border, very close to downtown El Paso. El Paso's had a history of Insights, but we've been in different places. So we started out in the basement of the El Paso Electric Building many years ago when it was formed by the Junior League, in particular led by Mary Ann Dodson. And for a number of years, we actually had a beautiful building down where the new ballpark is in El Paso. I don't know if anybody has been down to that great ballpark, but it was torn down to make way for the ballpark, and the EPISD has allowed us to habitate in one of their abandoned schools. It's a great old school. We actually own 211 acres in New Mexico of dinosaur trackways. So we're here to talk to you a little bit about that property. We're literally at the border of 2 countries and 3 states. So we are right there at the start. So why are we here? Well, you guys are, as the Trail Commission, are building a trail to tell the story of New Mexico through a variety of different ways. Insights has a New Mexico resource, and we have many stories that need to be told about that property. So we are here to see who's going to be able to bring those stories to life. The dinosaur trackways are sitting at the base of Mount Cristo Rey. If you've ever driven down I-10, you have seen Mount Cristo Rey off to your right-hand side. There was quarry operations on this site for many years. Job Concrete owned it, and those operations exposed over 500 dinosaur tracks on the property. They donated this property to Insights once the tracks were discovered. We are literally adjacent to the Rio Grande, as you'll see from some of the photos taken. This is taken from our property of Mount Cristo Rey. They have pilgrimages up the mountain. It's owned by the Catholic Diocese, and about 35,000 people travel through our property to Mount Cristo Rey every year. We currently have 3 kilometers of nature trails. We have QR codes on there so that people can access the tour information. And you'll see a little bit more about that as we go along.
Thank you very much. Out of curiosity, how many of you have actually been to either the dinosaur trackways at the base of Mount Cristo Rey? Fantastic. NMSU uses it sometimes, I know. So it's great to know that the word is out there. But considering the resource, we think that there's a lot more to be discovered by a lot more people. And we think it's a great reason to bring people down there. So just to help you orient yourself, obviously you all probably are very familiar with the Rio Grande and the trail that you hope to build. But where we're located is, there you go. Pardon me. So as you know, El Paso, being closer to New Mexico than we are to Texas, are right there at the base of the U.S. border. And if we zoom in just a little bit, this is I-10. Does everyone kind of have a concept of where we're at? The green is the Franklin Mountains. So if you continue to zoom in along I-10, downtown El Paso is right down there in the bottom. You have the Rio Grande coming through right here. And then you have the New Mexico-Texas border. And right here is the Mexico border. So right here we have approximately 4 million people living in Juarez, about 600,000 people living in this greater area. And this is the U.S. start of the Rio Grande. So zoom in even further. This is the property that we own. So right here is Mount Cristo Rey with the statue. This is where people take the pilgrimage. And when they come through, they get off I-10. This is McNutt Road. And this is where there's a lot of flat dirt parking area currently. We own the purple boundary right here. And you can see the Rio Grande running right along here. And to get to Mount Cristo Rey, those 35,000 people that make pilgrimages several times a year are parking along here and then hiking up the trails that lead up the mountain. That's owned by the Archdiocese. Everyone kind of understand where we're at? Okay. So there's a couple different things that Phil is going to share with you about the value of that property.
Yeah. So there are roads and railroads currently very active in the area, and as far as New Mexico is concerned, this is where the Camino Real starts. And the Spaniards came from the south and crossed the river right there at Ciudad Juarez, and then continued north. There's actually a little bit of a controversy about where the Camino Real went with respect to Cristo Rey. Did it go to the east or the west side? On the east side, it would have gone close to the river, but at times the river was in flood stage, and so they had to go on the west side of Cristo Rey, which was more sandy and more difficult to traverse. And then years later, of course, the Butterfield stage came through El Paso and went to Mesilla and then went west to California. So that was the beginning of the east-west traffic that went through the region. And of course, the railroads were developed through here too. This is the only weather-free transcontinental railroad. The others are difficult to traverse at times, certain times in the winter and such like that. And so this southern railroad has been extremely important. And it's important actually for security. The bridges can be seen. You can see on the left bridge, which is the westbound, you can see a railroad cars on it.
And the railroad bridges right here. I know it's hard to see the screen. I apologize for that, but and the Rio Grande is right below it.
Yeah.
And this is taken from our property.
And Eastbound is the one on the bridge on the right, which is just about at the international border. In fact, the presence of the international border caused the military to kind of occupy these areas during the World Wars, and there's still foxholes and things like that that one can see that, served for, security for our country. And one of the other things, let me add right now, too, about the trail. So there is a nice trail. A Jeep can travel it all the way to the top of the mountain. And a number of El Paso bicycle groups use that and take bicycle trips up and down the mountain. So that's kind of another aspect that people are learning to appreciate about this area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the political jurisdictions are several. We have the 3 states, and the city of Juarez is, immediately all surrounds actually the Cristo Rey area, and the small town of Anapra in Mexico. There's also an Anapra in New Mexico, and they're bounded just by a fence right at the railroad. And then we have Sunland Park, New Mexico, and Anapra is kind of a subdivision of it. A little bit north is Santa Teresa, and this area is developing economically and tremendous these days. There are huge warehouses and factories now in Santa Teresa. Also, of course, the state of New Mexico gave the railroad a tax break to build their new railroad yards. They're moving the railroad yards out of El Paso, Texas, and moving them to New Mexico. They're already almost finished, and so the railroad is very much a part of the whole situation. El Paso, this is the University of Texas at El Paso looking into Mexico. We adjoin Mexico. There's not a 20-mile distance between the two countries or the cities as it is in San Diego. Some of the other industry that's been active there is Asarco Smelter is now operated there for 100 years, is now torn down. It's a brownfields area. The Toro Cement Plant also is defunct. There was a Dixie Oil Refinery, and it's been torn down and defunct. The El Paso Brick Company still operates to a small scale. The El Paso Electric Company generates electricity from right here. And there's a cottonseed oil production facility that's pretty small. The Santa Teresa Industrial Park is large and getting larger. And the University of Texas at El Paso is right across the river. So these are some of the other activities that go on there. This is a view from the crow's nest up there, and you can see the river, how close the river, and it is kind of overgrown with plants and such like that, and has ducks and a number of wildlife that's present right there also.